Over the years, there have been many videos and documentaries showing the history of the Anzacs, and many videos done on how to make Anzac biscuits. And while we will be touching on both those things, this video is more about the evolution of the Anzac biscuit. Every year on April 25th since 1916, Australians and New Zealanders observe Anzac Day, a national day of remembrance honouring those who served and sacrificed in war. The first Anzac Day was marked with services and marches in Australia, New Zealand, London and Egypt. Over time, other traditions grew, including the baking of Anzac biscuits, a simple yet meaningful way to keep their legacy alive. The Anzac biscuit is a sweet, oat-based treat and is beloved in both Australia and New Zealand. Made from rolled oats, flour, sugar, coconut butter, golden syrup and bicarb of soda. These biscuits have a rich history tied to the Anzac legacy. So 125 grams of butter. And then we want 2 tablespoons of golden syrup. ANZAC stands for the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, a military force formed during World War I. The name has since become deeply ingrained in the national identities of both countries, commemorating the soldiers who served, particularly in the Gallipoli campaign of 1915. And just like Pavlova's, Lamington's, and the flat white coffee, the Anzac biscuit has been the subject of friendly rivalry between Australia and New Zealand, with both nations claiming its origins. I do love golden syrup. Goes very nicely on my porridge of the morning. I've just got to heat this up and combine it all. However, its development was more gradual than many realise. The earliest known printed recipe appeared in the Perth Sunday Times in 1916 under the name Anzac Ginger Biscuits. This recipe was published in the ladies section of the newspaper, where it won 4th prize in a recipe competition. This version lacked 2 key ingredients we now associate with Anzac biscuits, the rolled oats and coconut. And of course, better turn the oven on. It included ginger, setting it apart from the modern version. Alright, so now we want 2 tablespoons of boiling water. I'm not going to worry about the golden syrup on the spoon, because this is going to be going into the butter and golden syrup mixture anyway. And then we want half a teaspoon of bicarb. A year later, in 1917, the War Chest Cookery Book was published in Sydney, and this featured another Anzac biscuit recipe, although it still differed from what we bake today. Alright, so we have our boiling water and bicarb. We tip it in here with the golden syrup and the butter. Give it a quick mix through. And then we add it to the dry ingredients. However, within the same cookbook, there was a recipe for rolled oat biscuits, and this was similar to the Anzac biscuits we know and love. This is a very old spoon. This spoon belonged to my great-grandmother. So just imagine how many batches of biscuits this spoon has made in its lifetime. Probably a lot more than I have. The first recorded recipe with the name Anzac Biscuit dated back to a handwritten recipe found in Adelaide from 1919. And it was around this time that a New Zealand publication,
All right, I think that's done.
the St Andrew's Cookery Book, was also published, featuring a recipe titled Anzac Crispies, and this also bore similarities to the modern Anzac biscuit. In 1921, the Argus newspaper published the first printed Anzac biscuit recipe that closely resembles our version today. In this early recipe, the coconut was listed, but as an optional extra.
Alrighty, the oven has just come to temperature, and we have 2 trays, which is 22 Anzac biscuits.
And it wasn't until 1924 that a printed recipe formally included the desiccated coconut as a standard ingredient, solidifying the biscuit's modern composition. A modern misconception is that Anzac biscuits were a staple in soldiers' rations. In reality, the hard, long-lasting military ration known as Hardtack, or Anzac wafer, was what the soldiers were issued. And believe me when I say there was nothing wafer-like about these things. They were really hard, and in fact it was not uncommon for soldiers to use them to write letters home on. I believe there are boxes of them stored still at the Australian War Memorial, and by all accounts they haven't started perishing yet. However, Anzac biscuits, being made of ingredients that didn't spoil easily, were frequently baked and sent overseas by wives, families and women's groups as a comforting, homemade treat for soldiers, and they are commercially manufactured, readily available in supermarkets throughout the country. Anzac biscuits remain a cherished tradition in Australia and New Zealand and are a favourite for home bakers. Due to their strong connection with Anzac Day, April 25th, they are often used for fundraising by organisations such as the Royal New Zealand Returned Services Association, or RSA, the Returned and Services League of Australia, RSL, and additionally, Australian-made Anzac biscuits are sold in British supermarkets, supporting the Royal British Legion.
I couldn't resist. I have to try one, and I must say they're very nice. I don't think I'm going to be sharing these with anyone.
From humble pantry ingredients to a national symbol of remembrance, the Anzac biscuit carries with it more than just tradition. It carries a story of love, loss, and legacy that still connects us today. So as you buy, bake, share, or simply enjoy an Anzac biscuit, particularly in April, remember the hands that once made them with love and the brave hearts they were made for. And as we say here in Australia and New Zealand, lest we forget.